All right. I'm looking particularly handsome today. I just wanted to state that. Yeah, looking good. Shaved. Feels good. So what I'm going to talk about today is blaming society, and how blaming society can be a bit of a backdoor into not accepting responsibility of your life, especially the life that was set up for you by your parents. Okay. And what I'm going to touch on here is discerning, acknowledging what's happened in society as a mob, and then diving down into the detail as to how this mob becomes a mob, how society does what it does. So first, straight up here, in academia right now, and in mainstream media, and in faculties where ownership is avoided, and by ownership I mean it's somebody else's fault. Like, it's the politician's fault. It's school's fault. It's the education system's fault. It's the medical system's fault. It's society's fault. It's this country's fault. It's Russia's fault. It's America's fault. It's China's fault. Okay? And I encourage you, while I'm speaking to this, is feel feelings that come up for you. And if you can feel yourself disassociate, then maybe pause the video, feel the feeling, and come back to it. There's no need to endure the disorientation that comes from listening to me speak. And if you're tracking with me, then great. Welcome. Keep listening. Also, if you hear something that excites you a little bit and it gets your tail wagging, then put it in the comments. Say, hey John, my tail's wagging. This is really exciting for me. I love hearing you speak, or whatever's there for you. So in this, being able to claim responsibility as an individual. And what do I mean by this? I mean, the individual is a singular unit. And if a child, or you, or me, I'll speak from my experience, is when I didn't have parents that knew themselves and they were in their own codependent relationship, I don't know how to individuate myself. So I'm an enmeshed amalgamation of their trauma and who they really are at the core. Because they didn't know themselves, I don't have a template to know myself. So in my journey, in discovering who I am, I've needed to individuate, separate myself from what is me, from what is my mum, from what is my dad, from what is my culture, from what is all this other programming that I have received that has colored me or programmed me to be something that I'm not. Because when I am running a program, or the typical trope, or the saying is like an NPC, if I'm running my NPC, non-player character, that's what NPC stands for. And if you're into computer games, an NPC is a programmable character that a human doesn't control. It's just an algorithm that gets played out in the game. It can't think for itself. There's no human piloting it. So when you're programmed by your parents, you just become an NPC, a non-player character. You're not playing, you're just running a script, right? And then when you're running a script, you will coalesce, you'll come together with other people who are running a script. And then all of these people that are running a script or a program will look to you and be reaffirmed that they're doing the right thing, because you're running the same program that they're running the same program that you're running, and you're running the same program that they're running. And there's no challenge here. The status quo feels comfortable, right? Now, in the context of blaming society and the ills that have happened, the first thing that jumps out at me is Germany. What happened to Germany under the Reich, the Third Reich, okay? And where ordinary people turn on their populace because they're following something that is entrenched in the shadow of that culture. A supermensch, right? The ultimate human being. And this is a shadow that applies here. And then in other countries and other cultures where a tyrant will get into power, or somebody who speaks to the shadow, that unconscious component of the individual, the part of the individual that's looking for a family, that looking to belong, but didn't belong in their family of origin, but can belong now to a movement that accepts them for who they are, kind of, until they disagree with the movement, and then they're cast out, they're cancelled. So in this, an individual, when they're in a system that they're conforming to step out of that system is a challenge, because they're confronted by everybody else in that system saying, oh, you're making me uncomfortable. What are you doing that for? Don't go against this. Look at this. Look at how much better we're going to make the world based on this ideology. And this is where ideological possession comes in, and that's a term that you can Google on your own. And if you've got this far, I really appreciate it, because this is content dense. Some of the stuff may have already gone over your head and you just enjoy listening to me speak. And some of it might be landing. So, by acknowledging that civilization or society has done some wrong is important up until a point. And the point is, until you take your ownership of your place in society. And when an individual takes full ownership of themselves in society, that paradigm of blaming society doesn't have control anymore. It's I am responsible for everything. Everything that's happened. Every piece of malice and betrayal of innocence and indignation and resentment, I have a thumb in that pie. And this is the important piece when you're doing shadow work and inner work, is also being able to put your thumb in a pie of the greatness of humanity as well. Because what happens is the egregore or the entity that is negativity loves to create things to feed the loosh, and by loosh, this is a lot of esoteric terms I'm using here, like loosh and egregore, to feed the negativity that you're basically a piece of shit, right? So if you lack the internal sense of self to be with being that piece of shit, then you'll collapse. And in that collapsing, you can either internalize it and become depressed, or you can push it out and blame society. So in this, when someone is blindly obedient to society and rules, they become part of the society. They become part of the rules that execute. For example, a general can create a war plan, and yet it's the soldiers that execute it. Otherwise, the general's just in a room issuing commands. If people are disobedient, and the whole military is about creating obedience, and same with the school system, creating obedience. When you're obedient, you're more likely to be an NPC. And obedience comes from a pattern called the rigid. And that's in a book called The 5 Personality Patterns. And if you want to move out of it being an NPC or being a perfectionist and obeying the rules, have a look at the rigid pattern or the compensating emerging pattern. They're very similar. So in this, when an individual discovers their core self, it's much harder to program them. It's much harder for them to be infiltrated by propaganda. And propaganda is everywhere. Even this video is propaganda. It's propaganda. I'm aiming to re-educate you and swing you into a new way of thinking. Some people you can rename it public relations, but it's all propaganda. Everything that you see is propaganda. When you can own that, oh wow, I'm just being bombarded with propaganda. Then you can choose internally what's correct for you. Yeah? So, what's it take to become an individual? Well, first of all, you need to make the choice and see that you're actually enmeshed in civilization, you're enmeshed in society, and you need to be able to pull yourself back and acknowledge your footprint on the world, your footprint in energetics, and your footprint in the larger scheme of things in what you're here to do, right? And when you can see institutions like law or police or the military or the medical system or the teaching system, when you can see that it's made up of a whole bunch of individuals, it makes it much easier to swallow that blaming society for the ills is it's fantasy. It doesn't actually help anyone. Because when an individual is not differentiated, individuated, they don't see themselves as part of society. It's like, I'm different. Like I'm a part of society, right? You know, the man or the woman that goes to work in a coal mine, I'm doing a job. I'm doing a job like you. It's above my pay grade. I just work the mines, right? Or if there's another job like what's another example? I just fly the drones. You know, somebody else pushes the bomb button, or I just design the warheads. You know, I don't actually drop the warheads. That's above my pay grade. That's that thing over there, right? Or what else is there? I'm sure there's some. I just design the pills. I just design how the pills work in the brain based on my biochemistry knowledge. I don't actually know how they're going to be used. I don't know how they're going to be marketed, right? And if you want to go deeper into this is gene key 16. Gene key 16. I speak a lot about the gene keys in my work. Gene key 16 is about indifference. So what happens is when somebody is not individuated, when they've gone through a childhood where their parents don't know themselves, there's an indifference. This glazed look. Some people call it the fluoride stare. It's just indifference. You know, you just become numb to the world. It's too hard. It's easy just to stay with the status quo. Yeah? So indifference and being able to go through the indifference, know what indifference feels like in your body, awakens the versatility in order to step into what you're here to do and the mastery of you being you. So when you go to blame society or teachers or whatever it is, you can stop and go, oh, wait a minute. All these institutions are made up of individuals who are just obedient. And then when you go talk to your neighbor who might work in one of these institutions, there's a different frequency about your conversation. So, you're a teacher. What's that like for you? Like educating kids to be obedient, you know? Oh, you're a doctor. What's it like prescribing things that you know don't really help someone, that actually has a higher risk of killing them? Oh, or you know, they work in the military. What's your life like working in the military? Like, are you okay with taking the life of somebody else even if you don't know them and their family? Like, how have you distanced yourself from the humanity in order to justify a paycheck or justify avoiding that calling of what you're here to do? And that calling is going to get louder. If you're watching this video, that calling is going to get louder, and you have a choice to look at it or not. And either it'll be you looking at it, and if you have kids, it'll be your kids looking at it, because it's passed down generationally. So hopefully I've made some sense here. I'm just speaking. I'm doing this, recording this live, and then I'll share it to whoever I want to share it to. But if this has spoken to you on some level, please put it in the comments. Like, it's important that feedback is given, so I understand that, this is good, this is what people want to hear right now. Because sometimes I'm 5 to 8 years ahead of the curve, and not many people want to hear what I have to say because it challenges their reality. So if you're into and you have a kink for having your reality challenged, then share this with other people in your circles who have a kink for having their reality challenged. So hopefully this has made sense to you, and mad love. Bye.